Okay.
You don't want it ringing during the wedding.
Right. Oké, most megyünk egy esküvőre a churchbe. A gyülekezetbe. I can sing it in Hungarian. Boldog pár, keljetek egybe, keljetek egybe.
And what is that?
Nice couple, get together, get together.
Oh, I see.
Become one or something like that. Keljetek egybe. Drága testvéreim, azért gyűltünk ma össze, hogy ezt a két párt összeadjuk Isten háza előtt. Kedves férj, akarod-e feleségül feleséget jóban, rosszban, betegségben, egészségben, míg a halál el nem választ? Igen vagy nem? Ez lesz a mai témánkban. Házasodás, marriage. Getting married anyways.
Randy Isagawa. He's Mark's friend.
Oh.
Yeah, his wife ran off with somebody else, like Mark's wife did.
Oh.
Yeah. So Randy's getting married again. From Calgary. Her name is Rebecca. She goes by Beth.
I see.
He's a tiny little guy, but he always marries these big women. She has a big bottom. His first wife was Ukrainian. Big Ukrainian girl. Maybe his second wife is a little Ukrainian girl. Anyway, Randy's a very nice young man. He's a very tiny guy.
But I gotta sit somewhere where I can charge the camera.
You gotta charge the camera or the phone?
The battery.
Oh, yeah. We could just plug it in at the hall there.
Yeah. This is what we don't have in our show in Exploring Kelowna yet. Weddings.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is great.
But you can't put the song.
That's okay.
You can't
Doesn't have
use
to.
their pictures without their permission.
Oh.
Not without their permission. Don't worry. Mikey knows what to do.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'll just be way in the back, so I don't think their faces are gonna show.
Someone's being awfully slow, deciding where they're going. Let's see.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
For chairs. Okay, here we go. You are standing under a flower pot. Let's see if I go this way. Oh yeah, look at that. Very nice, very nice.
So it's good to be short.
It is.
That way you can enjoy the flowers.
Yeah, exactly. And walk under them.
And we have a great day today.
Yeah,
It's raining and it's nice umbrella.
it is. It is. Okay.
És most elég érdekesen beszélek majd. Sárga bögre, görbe bögre, sárga bögre, görbe bögre, sárga bögre, görbe bögre, sárga bögre, görbe bögre, sárga bögre, görbe bögre. Az ipafai fajpipa, papi pipája. Az ipafai fajpipa, papipipa, papipipa. Megy mag vagy mag, megy mag vagy.
A kockázatokról és mellékhatásokról olvassa el a betegtájékoztatót, vagy kérdezze meg kezelőorvosát, gyógyszerészét.
So we are happy that everyone's been able to make it here this afternoon. And we're happy and we're welcoming all that were able to travel from a distance to be part of this happy occasion of marriage of Randy and Rebecca. So you might ask, why a wedding talk? Why do we need to have a wedding talk? Well, the answer to that is you don't have to have a wedding talk. Randy and Rebecca have chosen to have one because of worshippers of Jehovah. They recognize that it's important to get marriage off to a good start. And what better start to a marriage than to get Jehovah's thoughts on things. And so we know that Jehovah instituted marriage to be a happy thing, to be something that would bring lasting and happy benefit to mankind. So we're going to start by going back in time and seeing how Jehovah instituted marriage, where it started, and what he's asking of us as married couples, in particular today. Some good reminders for both Randy and Rebecca. And we recognize too that Jehovah saw that Adam needed a helper. Now it's interesting because he created him perfect. And yet he recognized that it would be nice for Adam to have a complement. And so the scriptures that we're going to read are going to help us to appreciate that. So now you hear that expression, that's a match or a marriage made in heaven. Adam and Eve's was. So let's take a look at that scripture. The first scripture we're going to read is Genesis chapter 2 and verse 21 and 22. And it reads this way. It says, So Jehovah caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of his ribs and then closed up the flesh over its place. And Jehovah God built the rib that he had taken from the man into a woman, and he brought her to the man. So you may feel today that yours was a marriage made in heaven. It's not. There's not a marriage here that was made in heaven. And the reason we say that is because we're not perfect. So to a large degree, the principles that we're going to talk about today are going to help us to make sure that we have a marriage that makes Jehovah happy, but makes you two happy as well. So when we look at that, it's important to receive or recognize the direction from Jehovah. And so if we look here in a little bit down in verse 24, here's one of the most important reminders for someone that's getting married. In verse 24 it reads this way. It says, That is why a man will leave his father and his mother, and he will stick to his wife, and they will become one flesh. Now when you marry into a family, you marry into a family. And Rebecca, you're marrying into a large family. Nothing I can do or say today will prepare you. Okay? But equally so, Randy is marrying into your family, and a wonderful family that he will get to know as well. But the important part of this verse is simply this. The two become one flesh. Not one flesh with the family, one flesh with each other. So Jehovah wisely knew that to institute marriage, it was the marrying of two individuals to become one flesh. And for many in the world today, it's difficult to think of it as a permanent relationship, because we know that because of imperfections, sometimes marriage is not permanent. But Jehovah instituted marriage to be permanent. And I know from talking to both of you that that is your goal, and it can be a little bit daunting from time to time. But when we think of how we know our God Jehovah, we know him as a God of happiness and a God of love. So that means that all of the principles, all of the directions, all the commandments that are written in his word, the Bible, especially when we apply them to marriage, are meant to make you happy. They're not meant to be burdensome. They're not meant to be difficult. Just the opposite. Jehovah instituted marriage. He wants us to be happy. And it's good to mention that, because while we mentioned about the marriage bond supposed to be being permanent, many can boast of a long marriage, but was it happy? So just boasting, saying we've been married for 30, 40, 50 years, if it wasn't happy, chances are two people weren't applying Jehovah's principles. So Randy and Rebecca, what you bring to the table with experience, and you're not children, you're not teenagers, you're two grown adults. So what you're bringing together here is a background of applying those principles. You've both been dedicated to Jehovah for many, many years, and you appreciate that the key here is to put Jehovah in the marriage. And so the question is asked, how can you make a marriage last? We just kind of touched on it here a little bit. Because if we trust Jehovah, it can't just be one of us that trusts Jehovah. It has to be both. So when both mates follow Jehovah's advice, that's how we have a chance of having a lasting, but not just a lasting marriage, a lasting happy marriage. And you would have to agree that if we're really interested in pleasing Jehovah, it means that we follow his instructions. And I perhaps illustrated, I heard an illustration a while back that perhaps suits this. It's like a painter who's hired to paint a house. And he goes in and he paints all the rooms a different color. And he's quite pleased with his work. The problem is that the owner of the house didn't ask him to do that. So while he might be pleased with his efforts, the owner of the house was not. Jehovah is the owner of the marriage institution. So while you want to make each other happy, you also want to make Jehovah happy. And that makes sense, doesn't it? So we're going to look at an illustration. It's found for us in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 and 12. Now, when we read this illustration, you're probably going to say, many of you in the audience have been to wedding discourses before, and you're going to say, I have heard that so many times. We're going to talk about the threefold cord here. So Ecclesiastes chapter 4. In verses 9 to 12. It says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their hard work. For if one of them falls, the other can help his partner out. But what will happen to the one who falls with no one to help him up? Moreover, if 2 lie down together, they can stay warm, but how can just one keep warm? And someone may overpower one alone, but 2 together can take a stand against him. And a threefold cord cannot quickly be torn apart. So while it's an illustration we've used, and some might think, well, it's actually been overused, it's not possible for it to be overused. Jehovah recorded a very simple illustration for us so that we would get the sense of the importance of having him as part of our marriage. And so when you think about it, for both of you to be mutually respectful of Jehovah's desire for you to be happy, but also his principles and his commands, that passage means that Jehovah has to be the core of your marriage. And for both of you, you want to have a very strong relationship individually with Jehovah.